Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family-friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Newsies to teach our kids history.
Didn't you use that one already?
Yes! I told you I'm on a loop.
Oh.
I have a list of the things that I've used. I'm back to the beginning. I'm in the middle, actually.
Oh, okay.
If you have any new ideas, let me know, and I'll put them on the list.
Musicals? Just make up a musical. Usually, it's Gangly Orphan Jeff. Say Gangly Orphan Jeff next time.
Is that historical?
Technically.
Is it, though?
I enjoy the history of it.
So do I, but... Anyways, hey, honey, I have a history question for you.
I love history questions. Give it to me.
All right, so something that I've always thought was really important to teach our kids is that in the real world, people aren't 100% good or 100% bad. You know, reality is different than fiction. In fantasy, you have clear heroes and villains, but real life is not that simple. And I think you would agree that lately there's been a big push to look at people we would call heroes in history and find all the dirt on them and pull them down a peg.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about the opposite. Can you think of any really terrible person that history has labeled a villain, but actually had one or two good things about him?
Yes.
All right, give it to me. You're going to say Hitler, aren't you?
I didn't say Hitler.
You're going to say Hitler.
I didn't say Hitler.
Okay,
you said Hitler.
let's get it out of the way. Again, all these people that you're going to bring up are considered evil by history, and we're not disputing that, but real people are not 100% evil or 100% angels. So what is the good thing you can say about Hitler?
So the good thing that one can say about Hitler is that under the administration of the Nazis, mm-hmm. Germany did go from Germany was thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're gonna have to start over this. Okay. So after World War I, Germany in a bad place. Yeah. But Germany does start to recover mm-hmm. Before the Great Depression.
Okay.
When the Great Depression hits, Germany back in a bad place, mm-hmm. economically wise.
Right.
And so something good that one can say of the Nazis, though it be a cruel method, is that under the under the administration of the Nazis, because of the massive spending on military production and whatnot, mm-hmm. this actually revitalized the economy in Germany. Mm-hmm. So it brought, I wouldn't say it brought more wealth to people, yeah. but it so as much
you're hemming and hawing a lot.
You're asking me to talk good about Hitler and the Nazis, okay?
I thought you were going to go frivolous and say that he loved animals.
Oh. Oh.
You could have taken the easy way out.
Can we start this over?
No, that's fine. Did you want to tell us about Germany after World War I?
All right, so something good about Hitler. He was not a smoker. He was not a drinker. There is no record of him ever abusing children or women. Not every U.S. president can say the same thing.
Yup. All right, give me another one. Another bad guy.
You're going to have to throw a bad guy at me.
Stalin. Let's just go with the big ones.
Something good about Stalin. Yeah. He unified his people and fought back after the Nazis surprise attacked him. After the Nazis surprise attacked, and Stalin did a lot of mean things. Yes, not no denying that. But the Nazis were hardcore killing his people, civilians and soldiers mm-hmm. alike. So he galvanized his country into fighting back.
So I'm allowed to kill my people, but you're not allowed to kill my people.
Sure.
Is that his motto in life?
Sure.
All right. How about another one? Is Mao Zedong evil?
That depends. So,
that's kind of the point.
Yeah. Okay. So the way that to the best of my knowledge, most of the world would look at him and mm-hmm. say that okay, no, he was an evil man.
Yeah.
But I believe, at least in China, at least in some large enough sections of China, he is still revered. Yeah. Whether that's because they just don't know what he did, or it's they know and are cool about it. I don't know.
Okay.
But yes, by our standards, we would say that Mao Zedong was an awful man. I believe that one could argue he was the worst because I believe he has a larger body count on his name than Stalin and Hitler do. Maybe even a larger count than the two of them combined. But could be wrong. So yeah, he was not a very savory dude. But
what was the good?
Good thing that he did, he unified China. China was also in a bad place even before World War I, China was very bad economically, technology-wise. China was in a state of a warlord period from about 1911 up until about the invasion of China by Japan. There were larger sections like before Japan invades. China is still divided by the nationalists who control good swaths of territory, but the rest of China is still very much in a warlord state. Just no official government or anything there. Chinese Civil War resumes after World War II is over.
Yeah.
And Mao succeeds in unifying China as one nation.
And we're just assuming that unifying a nation is a net good.
Unifying a nation, I would call a net good because the alternative is continuous civil war.
That makes sense. All right, here's one that we've mentioned on the pod before. Vlad the Impaler.
Sorry, one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Mao Zedong was a good swimmer.
All right.
I loved swimming.
He did, and we did mention that before, too. All right, Vlad the Impaler.
All right, so
Dracula.
Vlad the Impaler, I think we've talked about him already.
We did.
So, yeah, he's got the reputation. He was called the Impaler because he liked to, for his enemies, the prisoners that he took, he liked to impale them on large wooden stakes that entered one part of your body and went out the other part of your body.
Thank you for that image. Keep going.
I didn't say where. Do you want me to say where? I thought we were trying to keep it fun and family friendly here.
Fun and family friendly. And he was a good guy
and we know that he did drink the blood of his enemies also.
Lovely.
But yes, in Wallachia, he is still to this day considered a good guy because he saved his people. He rescued them from the Turks. The Turks were trying to expand their empire into Wallachia, into all of Europe, and he was one of the guys that stood his ground and fought against them. All
right. Caligula. We've mentioned him just in very passing that he was super bad, but we're not going to talk about him because he's not a savory dude. What good did Caligula do?
I do not know of a good thing that he did. I would argue that in his case, though, he was a victim. So if I remember correctly, they don't have any records that really describe what kind of a boy he was, at least not that I remember ever reading. But he was taken and raised by an adoptive uncle, the previous emperor Tiberius, who was a very, very unsavory dude. Dude had parties that I think would make Epstein blush, just at how debauched and disgusting these things were. And he kept Caligula there. His name wasn't Caligula. I don't remember when he gets the name. Starts going by Caligula.
I just looked this up. Yeah, it's
his
like
name was he was actually named after Caesar. His name was Gaius Julius something or other.
I remember the last part was Germanicus because that was his father's name.
Okay. Oh yes, he was raised / I think held hostage on I said Epstein on Tiberius's private island during the last years of Tiberius's life.
So you're just saying that he was like a product of his abuse?
I would say that, yeah, one could argue that he was more so a product of the world that he was put into, instead of necessarily being a bad dude.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm hard pressed to think of anything good that we know of that he did.
Okay. Let me think. Other villains from history. Have you got any?
Other villains? There's lots of other villains. I mean, if you went by the Southern standards, Abraham Lincoln is a villain.
No, but we're talking like the consensus of history. So in that case,
so the people
Robert
that
E. Lee
are like without a doubt recognized as evil.
Oh yeah. Okay. Robert E. Lee is a villain to the modern United States.
Okay, that would be a fair thing.
What's a good thing about him?
All right, so a good thing about him, he was, I believe, a loving, doting father. Had several daughters. loved them, cherished them. He, even though he kept slaves, and to my knowledge, he never freed the slaves that he acquired. If I remember correctly, he never went out looking for them, never bought any of his own. All the ones that he had were gifts given to him, either through dowry or some other thing.
That, if you're going to use that as a good guy, like that, he could have freed him.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish that. So, he was we know that he was an advocate for, or not an advocate, we know that he was in favor of enlisting the slaves during the Civil War to be able to fight for the Confederacy for their freedom.
Yeah.
We know that he was an advocate of that.
What, he would have granted them freedom?
He was an advocate. So that
They
bill,
earned their freedom?
that particular bill, granted, I don't know if that bill ever came up on the floor of the Confederate Congress, but there are at least some people that were sponsoring that idea, because the South enough people in the South recognized, we need men. Here's a whole bunch of men.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, he was a proponent of that.
Wow.
He wanted that. Now, granted, was that because he believed that slavery? So, if I remember correctly, he believed that slavery was wrong. I don't recall him writing anywhere that he thought that no, slavery is a good thing that must continue forever and a day. But again, he didn't do anything to stop it, even when he had his own slaves. If I remember correctly, he used a common enough excuse at the time of, well, this was the society. It would look bad on him if he did this thing in society, if he gave them their freedom.
Social
it would
pressure.
look bad in the social circles, yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of scummy, but I get it.
So, yeah, so I would say so that was a good thing on him. And so I struggle to think of Robert E. Lee as a bad man. Kind of like on the lines of Caligula, I'd say it depends on the perspective of it. So, one of the things that I think remains an unsettled thing about how people study the Civil War is that idea of, okay, you could say that Robert E. Lee was a bad guy because, yes, he betrayed his oath. He promised to protect the Constitution and follow the orders of the President of the United States. He obviously didn't do that because he enlisted with a rebellion against the United States.
Right.
But in Lee's mind, he was giving up his loyalty to the federal government and keeping his loyalty to the state. This was, and I would say still, to this day, there's a fair enough argument for that, I think, amongst some people. The idea of, who are you more loyal to? You are the federal government or the state? And it's one of the founding principles of the Constitution, is the idea that there are some things that are supposed to be left to the state, that the state is supposed to be sovereign, and some things that are supposed to be left to the federal government, where the federal government is sovereign. And at the time of the Civil War, this question of, all right, really, who's the boss? Is the federal government something that's just supposed to stay out of the way of the states and take care of a couple of business? Or are the states something that is supposed to be supporting the federal government? Is the United States one country under the federal government, or all, say, 50 members of a club that happen to agree on mutual things for the most part? And that's a question that a lot of people didn't have the answer to. Unless I'm mistaken, large majority of the people that do end up fighting for the South are in that mindset. The idea that, okay, well, my state matters more than the federal government.
Right.
In Lee's case, if I remember correctly, when he's, I think he writes this down, I don't remember where I read this. When he is first offered the job, because before he resigns his commission and goes to the Confederacy, the Union tries to hire him. Winfield Scott, his superior officer in the Mexican War, actually has a private meeting with him in his home and says that, hey, we want you to be in command of the army. We want you to go down there and suppress the rebellion. And he basically tells Scott that, okay, well, there's a problem that I have with this. We know that Virginia is voting on whether or not to secede, and we both know which way that election is going to go. If I do this job that you were asking me for, I am going to be marching into my home, shooting at my neighbors, destroying my hometown.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
That makes sense. All right, clearly you know a lot about the Civil War, and we're going to have more Civil War episodes. But let's move on. All right. Hernan Cortez.
Hernan Cortez. I am unaware of anything good.
Nothing good.
There's here again. This is one of those things where what has survived.
Yeah.
I would hope that one could say that a good thing about him was the guy liked to paint.
But you don't know.
Nothing about that survives my. So okay. So here's one though on Cortez. So the Aztec Empire was not the empire in the traditional sense that you and I tend to think of. When we tend to think of empire, we tend to think of something like Rome.
Yeah.
All right, one people, one culture. Yeah, they conquered a lot of other places, but it was still one empire,
culture.
one culture.
Yeah.
That was not the Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire, Tenochtitlan was without a doubt an Aztec city, but most of the other cities and villages and whatnot in the Aztec Empire's claimed land, these were not Aztec people. They were not loyal citizens of the Aztec Empire. These were conquered people or threatened people that happened to live within the Aztecs' borders.
Oh.
And Cortez used that to his advantage. The good thing, I'm using quotes here, that you could say he did was he liberated these people. He basically goes to them and through his various interpreters was able to communicate to them that I am going to liberate you from your Aztec overlords.
Did he liberate them or did he manipulate and use them?
He liberated them from their Aztec overlords and then manipulated and used them by and continued to liberate them, particularly from their lives and their property.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another one.
Why is this your chosen topic of the day?
It's
scratching
just
the bottom of the
interesting to
barrel
me.
to try to find good things.
Because I get to put you on the spot over and over and over and over again.
Okay.
Okay, Blackbeard.
So another good thing about Hitler then, he liked to paint. Supposedly wasn't very good at it. To the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen anything that he actually painted.
Yeah.
But he liked to paint. Oh, and then I've told you about this. There's a picture that I like to show my students to kind of convey that idea of, okay, that context is everything, or that full information is important. So I would often show my students a picture of a little girl holding a flower, and you can see that she's holding hands with somebody. You can't see who she's holding hands with because the picture is cut off just above her head.
Okay.
But you can see that it's most likely a man because the person's wearing slack pants. And common reaction that I get when I show this, the two most common reactions I get when I show this picture are, one, oh, it's a little girl with her daddy, or two, what's the other half of the picture? You're hiding something from me. I know this is a trick.
They're too smart.
My students are too smart.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other half of the picture is that, the man that she's standing with, that's Hitler.
Yeah.
So we know that he was capable of taking this kind of pretty, like, if it wasn't for him, we'd look at this picture and, like my students who couldn't see the whole thing would think, oh, that's a cute picture of a little girl with her dad.
Yeah, he must be such a loving
or at least a father figure.
Yeah. So loving to stand there with her and hold her hand.
All right, so you were about to ask me about someone else?
Yeah, Blackbeard.
Blackbeard, okay.
Edward Teach.
Good. Edward Teach was his real name. Good thing about him, he did care for his men, or at least some of his men. On the eve of the last voyage that he went out on, where he pretty much knew that he was not going to come back from it. I am very unorganized in my recollections of exactly what goes on in his last days, but basically he kind of foresees what his fate is on his last voyage. And if I remember correctly, he stabs or shoots one of his friends to prevent him from going on this voyage with him, knowing that I just saved your life. Because he knew they weren't coming back.
He shot him, but he didn't kill him.
I don't remember if he shot him. But yeah, he didn't kill the guy. He did something to the guy to ensure he wasn't going to be seaworthy.
Dang. All right.
I don't have to, because I'm running out of evil people.
Oh, I just found a list.
I should rephrase. I'm not running out of evil people. I'm running out of evil people that I can readily think of something redeeming or endearing about them.
All right, I got one. Saddam Hussein. Tell me something good about Saddam Hussein.
He unified his people.
See, that seems like a cop-out at this point. That's...
So, okay, you tell me, all right, so you know what anarchy is, right?
Yes.
Would you call somebody that ends anarchy, even if they end it by establishing themselves as a dictator, would you say that such a person did a good thing or a bad thing? Because the alternative is that the people continue to live in anarchy. Unless I'm mistaken right now, Somalia is an anarchy. They have no official nation, no official government. And I do not know that, I have not heard anything to give me cause to believe that any of the people in Somalia are happy about it.
I wouldn't know. But no, I get what you're saying. It's, like we said, it's a net positive, I guess.
And
in the
amongst
long
other
run.
things, there was order, even if it wasn't what you and I would call the most decent of order. We could see by just how much crime, how much looting and whatnot went on after he was gone, that, that's a whole bunch of stuff that people wanted to do, but didn't do while he was in charge.
Okay. All right, what about Nero?
And I want to be clear with all
What?
this. I am not advocating that any of these people should be given
I
second
know.
chances. Or
No, I know. That's the whole point of
something
this.
about
It's
this.
just,
I don't,
it's just
because you're making me go through
interesting to
all
me.
these evil people. I'm feeling like we've
It's
talked
a-
about this. I feel bad when I recognize the not as evil as other
Yeah.
people evil things.
No, and that's a
And I
good
shouldn't feel
sign,
bad-
I'm
I shouldn't feel
sure.
bad about this, but I do.
No, I'm sure it's a good sign that you're a good person, that you're hesitant to say good things about mostly bad people. This is just
It's
a
a lot
fun
easier.
exercise.
It's a lot easier for me to think of that jerk that cut me off on the freeway today. Maybe his wife was having an emergency and he was trying to get home as quick as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
It's a lot easier to think of that sort of thing than, Caligula was just a kidnapped boy traumatized by a terrible adopted uncle.
I just think it's an interesting exercise because if people can recognize, okay, yes, there's that one tiny good thing about this person we all agree is evil, then yeah, the guy who cuts me off in traffic, there must be something good about him. There must be.
Fair point. All right.
All right, we'll just do a couple more.
You were going to ask me about somebody else?
Nero.
Was a good liar player.
Was he though?
Played the liar really well. Built a magnificent palace.
On the backs of, like, by stealing from everyone.
True. So he was a good liar player.
All right.
Man could make human candles like nobody else.
Oh gosh, no. No.
I'm struggling here, okay?
All right. Hold on. I had another one.
Now I want to be clear. There's a lot. If I remember correctly, there's a lot of people that say that. Oh yes, these candles that he made were in the Colosseum. Colosseum wasn't built in Nero's time. Colosseum was built on the ruins of his palace after they destroyed it.
Yeah, I remember that from your documentary. All right, Ivan the Terrible. Do you know
Ivan-
anything about him?
I know that he was Russian, but I am drawing a blank on anything else that I've read about the man.
Okay, maybe we'll have to research him because I'm just looking. It says the first Tsar of Russia. As a kid, he used to throw animals from the top of tall structures.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Hope some of them were cats.
don't know anything good about him. All right, last one. Andrew Jackson? President Andrew Jackson?
All right. So,
Ooh, is this a controversial one?
well,
You're like gearing up.
okay. So no, I think Andrew Jackson was a good person. The
Okay.
most common stain that I've heard people throw at him, I think, is a ridiculous one. Perhaps I'm remembering wrong, but if I remember correctly, the one stain that people regularly throw at Jackson was that he was an Indian fighter. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Killed a lot of Indians. Not saying that that's a good thing, but that's like the only thing that I remember off the top of my head that's a ditch against him on his record. Outside of that, his administration as president was fairly good. I don't remember there being any serious problems or complaints during his administration. Yeah, he was a hero to the United States in the War of 1812. He was the commander of the forces at New Orleans. New Orleans is famous because it was the battle that was fought after the war was already over, but mail was pretty slow
didn't
back
get
then.
word.
So yeah, they didn't get word at the time. But
Yeah.
he led the defense of New Orleans, defeated the British Army. It was arguably the greatest victory the Americans had in the War of 1812, and also happened after the war was over. So yeah, aside from the critiques on him for his Indian fighting, and yeah, there were some critiques of his presidency, but even Washington had critics of his presidency. We just don't talk about that too often.
Right, because we've decided he's a hero, so that's all we focus on.
I may have said this or not in the past, but I am very willing to believe that Washington would not have won a third term had he chosen to run again.
Really?
He had a lot. He was popular. That is
Yeah.
without a doubt. He was a capable man.
Yeah.
That is without a doubt too. But he had political enemies and political opposition in the country, in Congress,
Yeah.
and his critics were many in the press and in Congress. It's kind of that, you've heard this expression before, never meet your heroes kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, during the American Revolution, he was the hero, kept us together,
Yeah.
whatnot. But the revolution's over now.
Right.
Had he retired then, he would have been a god for the rest of his days. But he came back into politics, arguably because people needed him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was getting really eviscerated towards the end of his presidency. I would not have been surprised if he would have failed to run, if he would have failed to have won
Yeah.
had he chosen to run. Now that said, I don't think that was why he chose not to run
Okay.
for a third term. I'm inclined to take him at face value that no, he just thought That's enough. He didn't want to do it anymore. He wanted to retire because he had retired every other time before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's entirely possible that he would not have won if he had run again. It's this is kind of the same reasons for why John Adams, after him, only got one term as presidency. A lot of the criticism that was going against Washington, a lot of that criticism carried over onto Adams as well.
Right.
And then he had some of his own additional faults that weren't in any way connected to Washington, but he did have that kind of leftover sting of being part of the previous administration.
Yeah. Well, that thoroughly took us off topic, but that's okay because we're done.
I was going to say, we were talking about good things, redeeming things about bad people. Why don't we talk about the bad things about good people?
Because
I have so much fun with the bad things about good people.
Give me one. Your one favorite.
My absolute favorite?
Uh-oh. Your face makes me worried.
This is my absolute favorite one.
Okay.
Or at least the favorite one I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, go for it.
Woodrow Wilson.
I don't know enough about him to think, oh, he is a hero. You can't say anything bad about him.
I was about to explain.
Okay, go for it.
Woodrow Wilson. He was elected president in 1912. He was the president that saw us through World War I.
Okay.
He was the Democrat president in the mix of a whole sea of Republicans before him and after him.
Okay.
He was the creator of the League of Nations. That was, I say, the best thing that his 14-point peace plan, I think, was brilliant in what it could have accomplished if it was enacted.
Okay.
Part of his 14-point peace plan at the end of World War I was the establishment of the League of Nations.
And that's a forerunner to the UN?
It is the forerunner to the UN. So the League of Nations ultimately ends up failing and is dissolved, but after World War II, or it fails to stop World War II and is dissolved during or before World War II, but after World War II comes back, or the idea is reimagined as the UN, and the UN continues to be around today. So he did some good things, some very good things, I think.
Yeah.
And as far as being president, I don't think he was a bad president. I think he did a good job and the country survived.
Okay.
But the man was arguably the most racist president ever to hold office. I loved to laugh at this so much whenever I heard people talk about how, Trump's a racist, he's awful and whatnot. I'm like, I'm not saying the dude ain't a racist. I'm not saying he is, but I'm not saying he ain't either. But either way, don't think he cannot hold a candle to Woodrow Wilson. All right, so Woodrow Wilson, a couple of things that really stand out is pointing out that, okay, this guy is the most racist president we ever had.
Okay.
The thesis he wrote to get his doctorate so that he could graduate from college, the thesis he wrote argued that the black man is inferior, incapable in every way. But I don't remember all the words he used, but basically said that that people of African descent were lower life forms, basically.
This is many years...
Absolutely unabashed.
This is many years after the white man's burden and that...
No, this is in the era of the white man's burden.
Okay.
The idea of the white man's burden comes around the end of the 1800s. He's graduating from college at about the time that the white man's burden is going around.
Oh, okay. I have no concept of timelines. Got it.
Well, he's president in 1912, so he graduated from college sometime in the late early 1900s at the
that makes sense. So he's a proponent of that thinking.
Yes.
Whoa.
So there's that, and he was also the first president to have a movie screened in the White House.
What movie?
Sounds pretty cool, right?
It was... Oh, no. I know what it is. Oh, okay. Tell me. I know the name.
Birth
of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation.
Ooh.
Arguably, I dare say that one's not even arguable. The most awful, racist, horrible,
like super pro
story.
KKK.
Super pro KKK. In fact, they used a quote from him in that movie where, in his quote, I kid you not, he said that the Ku Klux Klan was a great organization that rose to protect... I don't remember if he said they rose to protect the South or if they rose to protect America.
No.
But that was a quote they took from him, and it was in the movie.
Ew. That's a bad look.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Still think he was a good president.
Good president did bad things, because that's how people are. People are complicated.
I think it's easier to talk about bad things that good people have done than...
Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely clear. It's easier to talk about bad things that good people have done than it is to talk about good things that bad people have done.
Yeah.
Because we tend to... I guess that this is a cultural thing with us. We tend to want to focus on the bad, and we want to relish in the bad and not find redemption.
I would agree with that. We don't like to find redemption in people that we've labeled as our enemies.
Well, I'd say it's not even about our enemies. I could be wrong, but I would dare say we just as people in general, we are more eager to find dirt on people than we are to find virtue in them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Interesting.
Like former friends of ours, I would say the reason that they are former friends of ours is they were more interested in finding something wrong with me than recognizing what good surely I have at least some good characters.
Maybe a couple.
They were more interested in the bad things about me than they were in the good things.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that they were arguably mean and awful to us, so I don't know if we've said this on the show, but in our private conversation we've had, I obviously still care about these people, despite the fact that they've shown very bad, wicked, even behaviors. I still care about them. I still remember the good things about the time that we spent together.
Yep.
I'm not trying to say that makes me a better person. I'm just saying
it sounds like you're bragging.
This is
not
the
very
example
humble.
of how we can look for it's okay to look for the good in the bad. Even though, yes, I did just have a huge wrestle with that in the list of bad people that you gave me.
Absolutely. Well, let's end there. That was a fun exercise, honey. Thank you so much. It was fun.
I wonder if our readers are going to find that as fun as you did.
Well, if anyone would like to know more about any of those people...
If I lose my job over this episode...
No. I think you made it very clear that you did not want to talk about the good things that bad people did. You definitely weren't on board with this idea. Well, we'll end there then. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you liked what you heard, then there's something wrong with you. Okay, I probably shouldn't say that to our loyal listener, should I? All right.
Yep.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about some other topic, contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just please make sure it's a silly one, because I think I'm serious out for the moment.
That's fair. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye. Oh.
You ready?
Oh no. Sorry, okay.
Need ibuprofen?
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Sure.
You gotta give something for the bloopers. We can't have an episode without good bloopers.
Yeah, because we never make mistakes.
Assuming that we wouldn't
don't
make mistakes
create
during the
bloopers.
Okay, yeah.